The Star Wars universe is vast, bigger than anything we can possibly imagine, and with each passing year, the Star Wars universe grows even larger. Let's take the Mandalorian culture for instance. When The Empire Strikes Back was released in 1980, the only Mandalorian we got to see was Boba Fett. But we didn't know he was a Mandalorian at the time. We thought Boba Fett was just some villainous bounty hunter in cool armor. Then, the Star Wars universe grew with the prequels. Now, the writers at Lucasfilm have given us more content on the lore of the Mandalorian people and culture than we could ever have possibly imagined. With that growth and knowledge of the warrior people from Mandalore came the addition of the Darksaber, the weapon of a former Mandalorian Jedi called Tar Vizsla. In fact, the only Mandalorian Jedi that we know of. Since the introduction of the Darksaber, we've learned that it's been passed down from generation to generation in the Vizsla family. Now it seems it's been won in single combat and grants the victor the right to rule all of Mandalore. That means that even though the Darksaber is Mandalorian, non-Mandalorians or Arueti have wielded it. But with the Mandalorian Excalibur coming with certain rules of ownership, what happens if the current wielder, Din Djarin, or really any other wielder of the blade, dies of other causes rather than being defeated by an enemy? What if the owner dies and the blade is not won in combat before someone can claim it, nor do they have an heir? If you enjoy Star Wars lore theories and in-depth discussions about Star Wars, then you've come to the right place, because that's all I talk about here. I don't talk about Marvel or DC, only Star Wars. So if that's what you like, hit that subscribe button and help this channel grow. Now, back to the Darksaber. What if an owner of the Darksaber dies of old age? Wait, that's hilarious. Not that a Mandalorian can't live a full life, but a Mandalorian of power? Someone is always out to get him. But be that as it may, what if a Darksaber holder did die before someone could take it away from them? And what would happen if they didn't have an heir? I guess then we'd be looking at a complete Excalibur story. Throw that laser sword in a stone, let somebody claim it. I'm not saying it should be shoved into a stone for the next worthy wielder to remove it. So don't think that's my conclusion in this, and I'm not trying to change Star Wars lore or Mandalorian lore in any means. As of now, Din Djarin wields the Darksaber, although not very well. But maybe that'll change. Maybe he'll learn to wield it properly, but as of right now, it belongs to Din Djarin. And we know if something happens to him, Grogu will likely inherit the blade. And before you say anything, the Darksaber had been handed down from generation to generation in House Vizsla since the times of the Old Republic, so it's not out of the realm of possibility. That means it doesn't necessarily have to be won in single combat, and I know this will sound disturbing, but Grogu is always with Din Djarin. They travel in the same ship together, always. What if that ship were to malfunction and crash into an asteroid or get shot down, with both occupants lost? The remnants of the crash and the Darksaber marooned on the asteroid. When the crash is finally discovered, would the Darksaber belong to the one who discovers it? Or what if it weren't Din Djarin at all? Generations later, there's a wielder, and that Mandalorian owns the Darksaber during a time of Mandalorian renewal, and the ancient saber is more of a status symbol and showpiece. When that Mandalorian dies without an heir, who gets the saber then? Would it be the next in command, or would there have to be a contest for the blade? If there were a contest, that means there would be a loser, and we can presume that loser wouldn't be happy that they lose to a Mandalorian that they see as inferior. Then the houses split, yet again, causing another Mandalorian civil war. Ah, the return to the old ways. But that would negate everything we would assume Din Djarin and Boba Fett will be working towards in the coming seasons of The Mandalorian. I'm not asking this because I have my own thoughts as to what would happen. I do have my own thoughts, but I'd really like to hear yours. I'm asking this because we are putting too much importance on the Darksaber. It is becoming more of an Excalibur or Elder Wand object, and those stories have been told time and time again. Instead, let's put it into a better perspective. The Darksaber isn't as important as some make it out to be. Yes, Mandalorians see it as this almighty divine right to rule, but we as viewers are putting more importance on it than there should be. Yet, this is where we are. where the ancient weapon has become a symbol of strength and leadership among the Mandalorian people. But at some point, there will come a time when the Mandalorian-made lightsaber will not have an heir or a clear victor in battle. So my what if isn't so much a Star Wars history-altering question, like what if Anakin didn't turn to the dark side or something like that. We know that didn't happen, but the possibility of what if the Darksaber doesn't have an heir or a clear victor to take hold of the blade has a very realistic feel to it. Even though unlikely, it could happen. There will always be someone to try to take the Darksaber from the current owner. As long as there are remnants of House Vizsla, I can promise you that. Just look how Paz Vizsla acted when he saw it in a non-Vizsla's possession. But to be a Mandalorian in Star Wars, one has to understand that one of the tenets of being considered one of the fiercest warriors is to raise children as Mandalorians. So that would assume that a Mandalorian should always have an heir. And in this piece of Mandalorian code, it's also a given that foundlings are to be raised as the finder's own Mandalorian child. What that means is, if a child is found orphaned, that it is their duty to take the child and raise that child as if they were their own, as if you really needed an explanation of what a Mandalorian foundling is. But examples of Mandalorian foundlings are Jango Fett, Boba Fett, and Din Djarin. Although Boba Fett wasn't technically orphaned, but rather created for the purpose of being raised under Jango Fett's code. He wasn't of Jango Fett's lineage, yet he was a DNA clone. The question was raised to me as to what happens if the Darksaber's owner dies outside of single combat. Who gets it? The simple answer is it gets passed on to that individual's family or the next in line to rule. Again, with the understanding that a foundling to be raised as one of the family. Such is the case for Grogu, but there is no current information on what that means if the wielder has no family. Since the story of the Mandalorian Darksaber is still in development, it does seem to take on an Excalibur or Elder One type of arc. Not that I'm pleased with that, but that's a story for another video. If one were to ask what my opinion is on the matter and where the story should go, I would say that it should be given back to House Vizsla. Yes, they are treacherous and devious, but so are a lot of Mandalorians. In fact, Din Djarin is no saint. A bit of that has been alluded to during the first season of The Mandalorian. We just tend to forget that and push more towards him being this amazing father figure. But why do I think it should go back to House Vizsla? Simple. That's where it originated. That's where it was held since the time of the Old Republic. And if that's where its story begins, that's where its story should end, with a member of House Vizsla destroying it, after they see the heir of their past in their own house. Don't worry, I'm not saying Din Djarin won't use it properly, or that Boba Fett shouldn't be Mandalore. I'm saying that it was not used as a symbol of total Mandalorian leadership before it was used by Maul, formerly Darth Maul, to lead Death Watch. So why now? Leave a comment below as to what you think should happen to the Mandalorian Darksaber if the owner has no heir and isn't defeated in combat, or even what you think should happen to the Darksaber in the future, even without all those things aside. And if you enjoy Star Wars theories, stories, and in-depth conversations, hit the subscribe button and help this channel grow to keep the content coming. This is Gerald from Star Wars Fanatic, signing off, wishing you all great health, happiness, and peace. Thank you for watching, and remember, this is the way, the only way.